Welcome to our December's Art Matters talk. My name is Corey Fry. I'm the exhibitions manager here at the Delaplane Art Center. Let me know if you need anything or have any questions. I wanted to mention a few housekeeping things before we really get started. There's two new exhibitions that open today, and you'll be hearing from folks from both of those exhibitions. So you're sitting in one, Frederick Camera Clique's yearly exhibition is opening today. And then if you go through the brick wall here, you'll see work by Ellen Hill. A little bit about Cam Miller and Frederick Camera Clique. So Cam is a photographer and is the president of the Frederick Camera Clique. The Camera Clique is the largest camera club in Frederick, Maryland, and it's a group created by and for photographers of all kinds. So digital, film, and alternative methods, weekend shooters, semi-pro, professional shooters, color and black and white, experienced and novice. They meet here at the Delaplane monthly. I think there's some variation during the winter on that, and maybe Cam can tell you. But they share their work. There's presentations and critiques. So if you're interested, you can talk to Cam, and she can give you details on joining the clique or any questions that you have. And so I'm going to welcome Cam up and give her a hand.
Thank you, Corey. So how many Camera Clique members are here in the audience? See, I paid them all to come. Thank you. Okay, so we do have 160 members, give or take a few. We seem to get a new member like every other week. And I ask people, how did you find out about the club? Sometimes it's word of mouth, sometimes it was just Googling the internet, sometimes they just moved to Frederick. So there's all kinds of reasons. We have all levels of experience too in the club. As far as I know, no one in the club makes a living at photography professionally. So we are, like I say, a variety of levels of experience from cell phones on up. Dues are only $30 annually, and a variety of benefits from that, including the opportunity to show in a show like this. I also put out a newsletter about twice a month, chock full of information. We meet on the second Wednesday of each month, but in the winter, January, February, maybe March, we meet on Zoom. We all did that during the pandemic, and kind of liked not having to go out in the cold and the dark and the sleet in January or February to come to a meeting. So we do those virtually in the winter. We also have hybrid meetings. So some of our members live in Pennsylvania or West Virginia or Baltimore. One is in Montana. And so we record our meetings and then put them on Zooms on YouTube so that people can look at the meeting link later on. So our website is frederickcameraclique.org, and if you're interested, I'll have this slide up again at the end too. So there's a wide variety of photography to see in this show, but for every photo there's a backstory behind the shot. I asked members to give me some of the backstory so I could share them with you. Alton Marsh's photo, which also has a red dot on it, is called Mom's Home. And it was taken on a boating expedition in the Chesapeake Bay where they were photographing a heron rookery. It shows great blue heron chicks seemingly admiring their parent as it lands. What really is happening is the return of a parent with food for the young, making that the only reason they are glad to see Mom. For many photographers and painters too, it's all about the light. When Laura Inglis saw the light on this caged eagle at the Philadelphia Zoo, she knew it made the photograph. The shadows are from the bars of the cage, so she called this image Liberty Denied. Cheryl Gilliman shot Hang On Tight at the Montgomery County Agricultural Fair. She wanted to capture motion blur to convey the feeling of movement in a still image while keeping everything else in the photograph sharp. By using a tripod and a slow shutter speed, she was able to get the shot she wanted. Brian Shoemaker took this image, Majestic Pear, at a favorite location for wildlife photographers, the Conowingo Dam. During the height of eagle season, hundreds of photographers line up along the riverbank, hoping to catch an epic battle over a fish. Recently, Brian's image was a runner-up in the wildlife division of the Maryland Photography Alliance's annual photography contest. This image by June Jarkey is titled Solo. June had always wanted to take an image like this where the sailboat is isolated in the water with a simple background. In January, while visiting family in North Carolina, it had been raining for several days, but on this day she decided to visit the inlet. She spotted this sailboat surrounded by fog, mist, and low clouds. A light breeze was slowly moving the boat, and she waited until it was in this position before clicking the shutter. This photograph shows that rainy, foggy days can often be better than blue skies, and that patience pays off, especially with photography. This photo is called A Door We All Pass Through. Bruce Bowers likes to tell stories with his images, using only a hint of a narrative in his work, so that there is always room to let the viewer in. In this piece, Bruce saw Lucy, the model, passing from one phase of life to another. Out of the dark and into the daylight, she looks impassively at the world. The apple of love, the vase of dead flowers, the beauty of nature, and the glow of day are yet to fully reveal themselves. Through the editing process, Bruce likes to bring his creative vision to fruition and hopes viewers can create their own interpretations too. Speaking of creative vision, Alice Newton happened across a batch of white mushrooms against a dark background at a local farmer's market. She captured the image with her cell phone, then manipulated it in Photoshop to create this abstract rendering of it. This image is called Shrooms 3. That one's right behind me. Jeff Grant captured Sherfy Farm on the Gettysburg battlefield just hours after a 20-inch snowfall in February 2 years ago. This view is from Millerstown Road, which had just been plowed. Even with a long lens, Jeff had to crop both for emphasis and composition. It won first place in the historic Gettysburg Adams County Barn Art Contest in 2022. Steve Greenberg took this image at Neast Point on the Isle of Skye off the northwestern coast of Scotland. He went to Skye in January and February of the year, specifically to take pictures of the island in the fog and mist of winter. His driver kept apologizing for the weather until Steve said, "If I'd wanted blue skies, I could have gone to Aruba." And just in case you were wondering, film is not dead. A number of our members use film, ranging from developing black and white to pinhole photography to color. Shannon Beatty captured this dreamy image titled Her Superpower in what she jokingly calls available darkness as opposed to available light in Second Floor Studios in downtown Frederick. Her butterfly project began 5 years ago and just wrapped up last month with enough photos for a photo book. The model in this photo was pregnant with her second child. Knowing that she was already familiar with the journey, Shannon knew she would rock those wings. Sometimes an image just stares you right in the face, which is what happened when Stephanie Boss was in a Washington, D.C. hotel bathroom. She had to capture the humor of being watched in the stall. Good thing she held on tight to her cell phone. We've all heard that sometimes a photo is a result of being in the right place at the right time. Well, that's true for more than just photos, but in this case, it paid off for Valerie Dyer and her image Into the Fog. She got up before 5 a.m. on a very cold and foggy morning to catch the sunrise on Charles Bridge in Prague. She was hoping to see the swans in the fog with the bridge in the background. She found no swans, but the atmosphere of the silhouetted trees framing the architecture in the distance was perfect. She had no idea the birds were in the trees until something spooked them. They all flew out at once, so she kept snapping away. Luckily, the birds came out in focus. The conversion to black and white is just right for this image. It recently won Best of Show in our summer juried competition. Rebecca Carpenter shot open-ended in Utah, way off the beaten path in a state park. She found various natural rock shapes that allowed Christy, the model, to create interesting forms within forms. Becky and the model played with positive and negative shapes within the rock formations. Here's another image that shows how atmospheric conditions can truly make a wonderful photograph. Bella Kendall got up early to photograph eagles at the Conowingo Dam. It was a chilly morning and an interesting fog formed on the river. There was not much eagle activity, but she saw two men in a small boat, side-lit by the sun. Sometimes what one is expecting to photograph is not what one comes home with. Bella advises you to always look around yourself for the unexpected. Regina Boston captured Snow Day along Carroll Creek while on a walk in the calm quietness of a winter afternoon. She loved how this person used an umbrella for protection from the snow and wondered if they were enjoying the snowfall, were waiting for someone, or simply taking a break from walking along the creek. No matter the reason, this is another example of being in the right place at the right time with your camera. Beach Sand Abstract is my contribution to the show. I was walking along the beach parking lot in Chincoteague when I noticed all the amazing tire tracks side-lit by the afternoon sun. I used my cell phone to frame this composition. So perhaps some lessons illustrated here are, any camera will do. It doesn't have to be a fancy one. Bad weather or foggy conditions can yield some beautiful images. Look up, down, and all around. The photograph you might be seeking is behind you. Look for the light. It can make or break a photograph. Use your own artistic vision to make the photograph what you want it to be. And finally, there are no rules except to have fun. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer about the club or about any of the images that you see here on these walls? Okay. Everyone who has a photo on the wall is a member. So this was an open, a member show. Any member was allowed to submit one or two smaller pieces for this show. It's an unjuried show, so we trust that people are going to bring us good work. Whereas a juried show, and we have one of those in the summertime, a judge, an independent judge, selects from all the submissions enough images to fill the show. So we get about 400 images from photographers from anywhere and everywhere, generally the Mid-Atlantic region, who submit photos to be considered for that show, and then the juror picks 80 to go on the wall. And that show is held at Frederick Community College, and it's up all summer long. But yes, this is all member work here. We have an example of pinhole photography. Brian, it's next to yours on the back wall there on the left. That is pinhole photography, and Paul Smith took that at the Dunker Church at Antietam. Shannon's are film here on the little color ones next to the exit door. This one that's behind me is also film. This is color film that Daniel Dister took. There are even some that are glass plate photography. Steve could answer more questions about it than I can. He didn't take that photo, but there are three little ones next to the window that are glass plates. Some are printed on metal. We don't do those. It's hard on your home printer to print on metal. No. So these are sent away usually to a place like Bay Photo or Nations Photo Lab will print on metal. Some are printed on canvas. Some are printed on different types of papers. So there's a lot of ways of displaying your photography as well, other than the traditional print and matte and frame. So you should see some different examples in here. Any other questions, comments? Yes?
Yeah, so now that you're talking about so many variations of printing, let alone taking the pictures, I'm always curious about how photographs and artwork can be labeled in order to give the viewer as much information for all those processes. But I know it's also, like, the label shouldn't be overburdened.
Right.
But
well,
because now photography just has such a wealth of variety of processes and printing, and is there a standard that people are working towards in the world with this explosion of?
Steve, can you answer that question, please?
So I'm going to put on my librarian beanie for just a moment. Okay, librarians and professional gallerists try to keep a vocabulary that is standardized, and when you're doing something like a library catalog, there is actually a vocabulary that is suggested by the American Library Association, working with the Society of American Archivists, and most professional photographers go like, that's not me. I can take my black and white picture in the corner there of sky and describe it in 5 different ways if I wanted to confuse you. And the evil word is archival. So to say something is an archival inkjet print is like, because the standards are not. So the best thing to do is in your own work at least be consistent.
Oh, okay, so that would be. But in terms of labeling for everyone to hone in on and understand, oh, that's what it is.
Some photography competitions require that you really describe it as digital photography on, such and such a paper by Epson, or this kind of film, silver nitrate on whatever. Some require that. But, I didn't do that for this. I collected the label information, and Corey asked me about that. He said, do you have some descriptors? They seem to be missing. And I said, well, it would all say photography, 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 or all just say digital photography. But the majority are digital photographs. And then how they're printed or what they're printed on, I guess, I don't know, mostly.
Just one more thing. For all the people who got black and white pictures on the wall, okay, how many of you did it in film? How many of you took a color picture and then converted it to black and white? And if you did, what software did you use? Because you can do it in your camera, you can do it in Photoshop or Lightroom, or there are third-party things like Nik. And
Nik
then,
filters.
well, Nik is that, I wouldn't call it a filter, but Nik has this
It's a conversion
called Silver Effects. Okay, and then there's at least one picture on the wall that was taken with a digital camera designed only to take black and white pictures. Okay, and I know that there's one that may be more.
Right. Most of us shoot in color or shoot in what's called RAW. If we're using our cameras, even our cell phones are capable of shooting in RAW. RAW is a larger file that captures more information than a JPEG does. But what you see on the back of your camera when you shoot is a JPEG rendering of that RAW image. But once you put that RAW image, even if you told your camera, show me my images in black and white as I take them, if you set what's called the some sort of a stylistic feature on your camera so that you can shoot in black and white. But if you're taking your photo in RAW, you dump it in your computer and it's color. So it comes out in color, and then we usually convert. So I know Valerie converted her photo of the bridge with the birds flying out of the trees. It was more of a sepia tone, she said, when she first looked at it. but converted it to the black and white. And it's so easy to make conversions to black and white in software now. So that's what most of us in the club use, the Lightroom and Photoshop combination that's available from Adobe for like $10 a month. It's a subscription plan. So most of us do that. Yes, Helen.
While you're talking about process, I'm curious about this barred owl. Do you know, and I think it said something about, I forget what the card said, but it was an intriguing photo.
It's probably what's shot in what's called high key. So it could be that the photo was taken against a flat white sky, and then by editing it to the point where you open up some of the shadows, because it might have been kind of backlit, and then you can there's a lot of things you can do, but in this case I think it was what was called a high key photo. Now you could take a regular photo and put it into one of these conversion packages like Nik software, and it will make a regular photo look high key. So high key is when it's mainly white like that, but sometimes we don't know what to do. We have to treat a plain white background, like the hummingbird back there with the flower. Another way to deal with a busy background is to extract the subject out of the photo and place it on a white or a black or a solid color background. So there's so many different ways to edit photos nowadays. And then we often run into the purists. Oh, you took something out of that photograph, or oh, you put something into that photograph. I would never do that to a photograph. Well, we can appreciate that point of view, but every person in here has the right to their own artistic vision. So however they want to create mushrooms, an abstract out of white mushrooms over there, go for it, you know? We call that photography too. So it's just fun. That's our main goal, is to have fun and to learn from each other, because the beauty of the software is you can make umpteen versions of the same photograph. And whichever one appeals to you is the one that you might keep. Yes, there was another question, I think. Yes.
No, I'm just thinking about the pieces that shift from kind of photography into almost photo painting.
Uh-huh.
So are there places in which,
Oh.
because it would always be included in a photo exhibit, but maybe some of these could be end up included in maybe even painting?
Okay, so some competitions say that you cannot have digitally manipulated, whatever that means. They're all digitally manipulated in one way by putting them in your computer in the first place. But to create an oil painting out of it or a watercolor out of it, yes, we can make it look painterly. In our competition, we don't make any distinction between something that is a painterly image as opposed to a straight, non-painterly image, I guess. But some competitions, especially wildlife competitions, will say you cannot, do anything other than brighten it, sharpen it a little bit, maybe remove a dust spot off the. But so our show that we had well, let's go to Bruce's back there with Lucy on the wall. That's a very painterly image. So Bruce composited that image with a bunch of vintage backgrounds and things that he added to that photograph. So there's a competition though at the Maryland Circle Gallery, Maryland Federation of Art, and it's only digital art. So anything that is digitally painted or digitally manipulated in some way, that goes into a show like that. So we need to start wrestling with AI. That's the other issue, is how do we start addressing that? And there's some really cool stuff that's created with AI, artificial intelligence now. But some competitions are saying, let's just run with it. Let's make a category for it and see what people can do with it. So where it gets a little shaky is when you have a beautiful photograph of a waterfall and you decide to put a horse drinking in the water out of the waterfall. The horse wasn't there, but your AI software put it there for you, and it looks very realistic. So again, it's creating art, but do we make people admit that this wasn't their own horse that they put in there. I don't know.
Because I think if we know, like, because I'm just, even though I only take pictures now on my phone maybe, to know how it's created and therefore how it might be exhibited in a certain category, I think is informative to anyone. I mean, maybe people just, want to buy an image because they like it, but to know all those differences, I think is kind of interesting.
It is. That's all part of knowing the backstory behind the image too, and how it was created. Some of our members do an awesome job with composites. Now they may take every piece that went into the image and put them all together into an image. Photographed the umbrella, photographed a mouse, photographed a model, photographed a woods, and then through the magic of software and masks and all that, Tim Stevens put them all together. So, I don't know, it's still photography, and he photographed all the elements of the photograph. So that's a whole other level of learning, is all that, how to do all those composites. So, and I'm a big fan of apps on my phone. I mean, I love to take something and make it look like a watercolor after I took a flower in a garden and put it on an app, and suddenly it looks like Monet painted it, and So, but when I put it on places like Instagram, I always put in the hashtags what app I used, so that people don't think. Because I remember the first time I saw one, a friend of mine did something through Corel Painter, and it was this beautiful rooster. And I said, that's not fair. I said, you're already a good photographer and you're a painter too? And she said, no, this was software that turned her rooster into this gorgeous painting. But, yeah, it's all art, and that's why I say it's fun. It's just fun to try all these different things, and a huge learning curve, but, that's a benefit of the Camera Club. We find out a lot of information from each other and do a lot of learning with each other and from each other. Are we ready, Corey? Good. Our speaker is here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Cam. Such a great show and such a variety in one medium is what's really exceptional. I'm going to read an introduction for Ellen Hill, and Ellen is going to share with us here. One moment. So Ellen Hill grew up in Rocky Hill, New Jersey, and Athens, Georgia. She moved to Montgomery County, Maryland in 1991, and she served as a resident printmaker at Pyramid Atlantic Art Center in Riverdale, Maryland, and as a resident artist at Hood College here in Frederick, and Montgomery College in Silver Spring. She's taught design at Montgomery College, printmaking at Hood College, and drawing at the University of North Carolina. Ellen has shown work regionally, nationally, and internationally, and is represented by the Stephen Scott Gallery in Baltimore. She has an MFA from the University of North Carolina, and she lives and works in Rockville, Maryland. If you would, give it up for Ellen Hill.
Corey makes everything look seamless when the artists mess up, so thank you. A little senior moment there. I hope you'll forgive me for being late. I wanted to tell you about, first of all, I don't know how to do this.
No, that's my fault. I forgot to put it back on the slideshow. And you can just arrow through.
Okay. Thank you to the Delaplane Art Center and everybody here for allowing me to exhibit my work in this beautiful space. I've always loved the Delaplane. I thank Corey for everything he's done to help me along the way. He is on top of things the whole way out and does an amazing job. I'm going to start by talking about my work. Usually the thing that people ask me the most is, how do you do it? How do you make these things? And so I have a couple of slides of the process by which I make these paintings. This is me starting the layout for the big piece, round piece that's in the other room. It's called Roundabout. And basically what I do is I take birch veneer plywood and coat it with some gesso and then paint it and carve it and cut it up into little pieces and then glue it back together to make these big textile-like works. So this is the layout for, let's see, how do I do this? Okay, for this piece that's hanging up there. This was made during the pandemic. I hadn't been working with a figure for very long and wanted, being isolated and lonely, I really brought the figure back into my work. I really missed people during that time. This is another one of the pieces that's in the other room, starting with the layout, just how I kind of start things, and then this is the finished piece. This is called Waterfront. I have 2 rooms in my house that I use for studio. This is downstairs where I do the painting and the laying out, the drawing, and I'm lucky that I have south-facing windows so that I get a lot of sun in there. And then this is my wood shop. What you can't see behind me, this is my garage. There's also a miter saw and a sander, but this is, actually I cleaned it up before this picture, so. Yeah. The way I started doing this kind of work that I do is, I was a printmaker for a long time, and I made wood block prints. For anybody that doesn't know what that is, you carve an image into a board, ink up the board with ink, put a piece of paper on it, and run it through a press. And I did woodblock prints for many years, and the board started piling up in my basement. And so I started making things out of the boards, sometimes 2D and sometimes 3D. This is a box that I made from some of the cut-up woodcut boards. So then I ran out of woodcut boards, and I started making pieces specifically to make these 2D objects. The horse and the lotus flower and the bird are all still woodcuts. I inked up the board and cut these images out of the board. And then the other stuff is paint. This was a very early work when I started doing this stuff. This is called Work, Rest, Fly. This is another early work. I started working with Stephen Scott Gallery in Baltimore, and his gallery was right close to the water, and so I started making a bunch of sort of water and harbor themed pieces. This is called Harbor One. There was another one that goes with it. I was interested in sort of combining the sharp edge of the saw with the more fluid and active action of paint. And this is another set. This is called Sea Level, and it's a set of 4 that go together. I started doing some really big work. This is about 5 feet by 4 feet. This is called Summer, and I wonder if I can make this. No, okay, this is, it's carved and painted plywood again. And for a long time I started doing these fairly abstract pieces. This is called Blue Pitch. It's about 3 feet by 3 feet. This is called Rain or Shine. This is one of the more abstract pieces I've done. This one I put in here because it's in the collection of the National Museum of Women in the Arts, and so I was proud of that one. So after years of, most of my work is based in nature. It's inspired by our relationship to the natural world, and it was like that for many years. I would say, right around the pandemic, I'd been thinking for a long time I'd like to get back to using the figure in my work. I started using other images before I got back to the figure, though, just because I was a scaredy cat for a little while. And so I did birds and flowers. And so this is a flower image. This is called Big Green Flower. It's about 34 by 34. This is called Bloom Time. The way that I do the flowers is paint the image on the surface of the board and etch the line that surrounds, that's the outline of the flower, and put paint into it, and then carve away around it. Does that make sense? This is called Fat Wren. I have a lot of birds. We have a bird feeder in front of our house. So the same, I painted the image on the board, which is up top, and gouged, etched into it. This is combined painting and sort of etching, where I push paint into the lines and then carved around it and then added the motif at the bottom. This is cardinal on post. This is the last bird I did. Did a lot of birds, and this cardinal had a lot of attitude, and I liked it. So I got to a point where I was frustrated with how, with woodworking you have to be really precise. It's all about accuracy, making everything real clean. And I was in love with these quilts that were kind of, textiles, old textiles, folk art that would, G's Bend type quilts and collages that had a lot more rhythm to them than just everything matches up perfectly. And so I decided to try to make something that was a little off. And it's sort of the way that sometimes jazz is a little bit behind the beat or something. And so I used to work at a group woodworking place called the Woodworkers Club, and it was a bunch of woodworkers that worked there. And this was around 2019 that I made this, and so I decided I wanted to make something that was more a little lively, and made this, and I was really happy with it, but a lot of the woodworkers were like, "Oh, well, that's too bad. Nice try," and But I think they understood what I was going after. And then I just started getting out of the box completely and started making shapes and cutting them out and putting them on backings. I made this one after my mother died. She had Parkinson's disease, and she died in 2020. And this one is called Not Fade Away. And this one, since I liked the way the first one came out, I made another one. And this one is called Wild Life. Another one, this is called September. At the same time that I was making these pieces, I was also working in handmade paper. This was also still during COVID, and one of the places that I could be out and working with people was an outdoor paper making studio. My friend Helen Frederick has a studio in Silver Spring, and so we worked. She has an open air studio in her backyard, and so I was making these. Actually, I did this one before I did the wooden ones. This has clothes. This has elements from my mother's clothing. I did this while she was fading in the last year of her life, and I cut up some of her clothes and put them into this. And it's about the same size as the ones out here. And this is called Flower Cloud. This is Flower Cloud 2. And it also has items from her clothes. This piece is called Songbird, and This is another one that I did during COVID. Spent a lot of, hours in the garage. Going the wrong way. I don't know if you probably can't tell from where you're sitting, but one of the things I liked about this is that it combined the precision and the straight lines of the woodworking, but I also wanted to get these stripes, like this stuff and this stuff in here, are a little off. You can see it in the other room, and I wanted to get a little randomness into the piece and not have everything perfectly match up and have it feel a little more textile-like. And this is, I had a hard time naming this one. This one is called Rabbits. And this, I was inspired by some lace. I saw a picture of some nuns working on lace, and it was just a beautiful, huge lace tapestry that they'd made. And this is not the pattern they used, but I just kept looking at it and saying, I want to do something that looks kind of like lace. And so I did, this is what I came up with. We live in Rockville on a dead-end street that backs onto a creek, and there's lots of wildlife around, lots of bunnies, lots of birds. We saw a fox this morning. Deer come through the yard every day. We have groundhogs that get in our garden. So it's there's lots of food for thought there. So let's see. This is one of the pieces that's in the show. I did a series of hug pieces also during COVID. This is called Hug. And it's some people that live in our neighborhood. At the same time that I was making the pieces in wood, I was doing some in handmade paper too. This is my next door neighbors. We would, when things were really bad right at the beginning, we would go sit on each other's porches around the fireplace and just keep each other company. And so this is Mike and Marie. This is Helen and Shanti. They're Helen is the woman whose the studio I worked in, the paper maker. This is from a photograph of them, and this again is handmade paper. And this is the piece, same people in paper and wood, and that's the piece that's in the show next door. And that's my talk. Thank you again for waiting for me. I really appreciate it. Had a senior moment there. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Yes?
When you make your papers, you work from existing fibers, or do you draw from scratch?
When I do paper making,
Yes.
we get, Helen orders cotton beaters. She's got a beater, so she orders it from some place and then beats it in her beater in her backyard. So, yeah. And you can, with paper making, you can mix, you can do short beaten fibers, and you can do, if you beat the fiber really small, cotton fiber really small, then you can add the pigment to it and paint with it. And that's why you can make things that are painted in handmade paper.
So you don't use esoteric fibers like concrete or things like that, you use more?
Usually the base sheet is cotton abaca, and then all the fine, really fine beaten color is pigmented cotton. Yeah, yeah. And if you want to know more about the paper making, Helen Frederick is a great person to talk to. I worked at Pyramid Atlantic Art Center for many years, and that's a center for paper making and print making, and that's where I learned a lot of what I know about persevering, I would say. So, yeah.
Do you start with a sketch or a particular colorway that you want to use?
It depends on the piece. With this one, I started with a photograph, and I decided I was going to make the image very simple and just do an outline. So I started with that, and I didn't really know what colors I was going to use around the outside. I decided I often start with using colors that I have left over from material I have left over from other pieces. And so I had some, but I would say with the completely abstract ones, it's mostly just about color. Those ones that were grid-like, and I paint boards and look at them, kind of line them up and see what kind of patterns I like that go together and what kind of colors, sort of like design swatches before I start cutting them up. But I always adjust throughout, and always make material that doesn't work into the project, and then that's saved for some future project. So it's very much, I never have the plan set out from the beginning. Even the ones that are like that, you would think that I'd plan that out from the beginning, but I just started out with egg shape, and then thought, what am I going to put in the middle of that? So, yeah. Well, thanks again. I really just can't tell you how excited I am to be showing here. Thank you.